Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Last week, we learned that the Saints were interviewing Keith Williams to be the receivers coach. It felt like that was going to get done, and apparently it did. Nick Underhill earlier on Tuesday reported the Saints have hired Keith Williams to be their receivers coach. 2-year deal, was an assistant receivers coach in Baltimore this past season, and has a history dating back to Derek Carr and Devontae Adams' time together at Fresno State. So there is some synergy there, as we discussed last week. Ross Jackson's with us, Locked On Saints. I want to talk some Saints coaching staff, free agency, all the stuff ahead. Hey, man, always appreciate it. How are you?
Hey, buddy. Doing great. Glad to be here with you, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, man. Since it appears now the offensive staff is finished, at least the primary positions that they had to replace, give me a thought, if you would, on what Dennis Allen was able to put together here. I guess Allen and Kubiak together.
Yeah, I think the thing that's really interesting about this one, Matt, is that you look at this sort of new construction of the coaching staff, and they're wanting to bring in sort of this new identity over on the offense, one that was, I think, obviously very necessary after the course of the last couple of years. But they found a way to bring in something new while still maintaining what they love, which is cohesion, by creating cohesion amongst the new staff. They brought in a lot of guys that are tied to one another. John Benton has spent time, the guy that's expected to be the offensive line coach. He's spent time with other coaches that were brought in. Rick Dennison is another guy that's coming in as the, I think, run game coordinator is a title that he'll fill. At one point, he actually took on different roles and with other teams. Like, these guys have had a lot of overlap with one another, and even where there's not specifically overlap with the Shanahan/Kubiak run of systems between Denver and Houston and Minnesota and San Francisco, the other thing that you see is one that you mentioned as we came into the segment here was like Keith Williams, who's connected directly to Derek Carr in his past, has worked with some wide receivers across the NFL, even outside of those that he's coached and all that. I think that you sort of see the sort of unique combination of new ideas, new influence, but cohesion amongst those new ideas that are coming in, which is a really, really good space to be, because the only thing worse than, the only thing that can really, really guarantee to get in your way when you're bringing in a new system is bringing in a new system led by a bunch of different people who have a bunch of different ideas. This kind of helps to unify under that new wing.
Do you think, and this is kind of my biggest question here, Ross, I totally love what they did, and everything you explained makes a lot of sense. A lot of synergy among the staff. Do the Saints have the personnel to match what this new staff wants to accomplish offensively?
I wouldn't say one-to-one just yet, but with free agency and the draft still ahead, there's a lot of opportunity to be able to kind of close that gap. I don't think that any of these coaches, this staff, coordinator, or position coaches, run game coordinator or otherwise, takes the gig unless they believe in what the Saints have foundationally. Derek Carr, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, who I know is a restricted free agent, but he's not going anywhere. A.T. Perry, Juwan Johnson, and Foster Moreau at tight end, so on and so forth, right? The offensive line, all that. But obviously, and probably starting with the offensive line, there are additions that need to be made, and there are improvements that need to happen. I think that one of the things that you look at is, the offensive line in particular. Clint Kubiak, coming from that Shanahan system, having been a part of sort of the origins of the Shanahan system, in that the Shanahan system was developed by not Kyle Shanahan, but Mike Shanahan, his father, as well as Gary Kubiak, Clint Kubiak's father, back in San Francisco/Denver years ago in the 90s. That whole scheme wins and loses, survives and dies by its offensive line. Then you see them bring in John Benton, who's got a very strong track record working with offensive lines. Rick Dennison, who's got a very strong track record of building successful run games. You can see where they want to put a little bit of emphasis there, and I don't think that it's coincidental that the coaches that are coming in with the most experience are coming into the positions where the Saints maybe need the most work.
Ross Jackson's our guest. He's on Twitter at Ross Jackson Nola. Make sure you're subscribed up to the Locked On Saints podcast. Needs, offensive line is a great place to start. Do you think they're more likely to address that? Let's first of all say, like, who among the starters do you think is not back, I guess? And then Do you think they're more likely to address offensive line, Ross, in the draft or in free agency?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised to see both. It's just that the more they address it, the more adequately they address it in free agency, the later they can wait to address it in the draft, which kind of helps them out. But then they can also go best player available, which might be an offensive lineman because the tackle class this year is absolutely spectacular
Right.
in the draft. So I think that in terms of the guys where you might see a little bit of changeover, and I'll look at 6 starters and include both kind of Trevor Penning and Andrus Peat and James Hurst in here, is that like you don't really know necessarily not only who's returning, but where are they playing. So if we look at like Ryan Ramczyk, for instance, who's dealing with sort of that degenerative knee issue and everything, won't he have surgery over the offseason? Won't he be available in 2024? And then if he is available for 2024, is he available week 1 right off the bat? So lots of question marks there. Trevor Penning, we got to see what they're going to do. Is he going to get opportunities to continue to develop? What opportunities will he be given? And what position is he going to be given those opportunities? Will Andrus Peat be here? Will he be elsewhere? Is he going to get big money now that he started and played games at left tackle and looked mostly healthy for the 2024 season? And then James Hurst, where does he fit in? So I think there's so many questions on the offensive line that even if, let's say, 2 of those 3 players are back and ready, or 2 of those 4 players are back and ready to start in 2024, you still have question marks about where they're going to play, where they're going to contribute, and how healthy they're going to be, how long are they going to hold up. So I still think that addressing the offensive line is going to be a good idea. And do they fit in what this sort of next iteration of the run game is going to be under Clint Kubiak and with that new offense?
What do you think is the best case scenario in the draft at 14?
My best case scenario is Olu Fashanu, the offensive tackle out of Penn State. I know a lot of people kind of turn their noses up at the idea of drafting offensive linemen in the first round for the New Orleans Saints based on their recent track record, and I get it, I understand. But Olu Fashanu is a guy that continues to kind of tumble down a little bit. Now, this is pre-combine. We'll see what happens once he's in the combine, of course, but it kind of tends to tumble down a little bit. And so if he's a guy that is available at 14 or is a trade-up target, he's somebody that the consensus in terms of expectation is that he's going to be an all-pro. He's got every tool in the kit, not just height, weight, speed in terms of his athleticism, but he's got the length, he's got the wingspan, he's got the experience, all that. No sacks allowed in his career, as charted by Pro Football Focus and others. Just remarkable. So I think that for me, like that's kind of the most solid, safe home run that you're going to find. But look, some of these pass rushers like Laiatu Latu out of UCLA and Jared Verse out of Florida State, if the Saints address their offensive line in free agency, they could go to the other side of that, the trenches as well.
A couple more minutes here with Ross Jackson on Twitter at Ross Jackson Nola. Make sure you're subscribed up to Locked On Saints. Same question, free agency. How, Ross, I mean, the Saints historically, they usually have that like one big ticket item, right, that they'll spend in free agency, and then they wait for the second wave to be sort of bargain buyers. Is there a player or position that you either expect or would like to see them address in that first wave of free agency when it comes?
Yeah, I think along with the offensive line, if the right opportunity's there, although they could wait on that. Wide receivers, one. Look, the Saints have some really talented young wide receivers in Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. Once they figure out sort of the restricted free agent situation there, which should be pretty simple, and then the young A.T. Perry. But those right now are the only 3 wide receivers that they're set to currently have on their roster. They even have a wide receiver on a future reserve deal or anything like that at the moment. And so when you look at sort of free agents like T. Higgins, that's a big ticket opportunity there. But then there's sort of the more bargain bin version of that in a Tyler Boyd. And I don't mean bargain bin to be disrespectful for Tyler Boyd. I just mean realistic contract-wise and things like that. So there's a lot of, good free agents and at wide receiver, and that pool can continue to grow if Brandon Ayuk hits the market or something like that, and then that pushes some of the other guys to the top further down. So I feel like if there's an opportunity to really make a splash somewhere, wide receiver could be a really great place to do it because you want that big-bodied possession guy. Sure, A.T. Perry can turn out to be that, but if you can get a veteran that's already done it in the NFL and then let A.T. Perry continue to develop and then hold a specialized role, there's nothing wrong with that.
Last thing, do you think Jameis is back in New Orleans next year?
I would love to see it because I think that it would be the perfect opportunity to be able to display leadership by unity as opposed to leadership by dismissal. With the final snap of the Saints offense in the season, with the kneel down that should have been, that turned into a Jamal Williams touchdown, all that. It's a quick and easy way to kind of turn that into, hey, you didn't do the thing that we wanted you to do, so you're gone. But then I think it makes a louder and more positive statement to your locker room that loves Jameis Winston if you can turn around instead and say, hey, you did that. We weren't a big fan of it, but we still want you here because we believe in your value. So I think more than likely he probably ends up elsewhere. But, man, keeping him in New Orleans would be a big-time flex for Dennis Allen and his staff.
He is Ross Jackson. Follow him on Twitter at Ross Jackson Nola, and be sure to subscribe up to Locked On Saints, your favorite podcast app, and, of course, on the YouTube channel. Always appreciate it, man. Thanks for a couple of minutes.
Thanks, dude. Always a pleasure. Take care, stay safe, and talk to you here soon.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.